Welcome back to another episode of Kate and Isaiah Living Large. I'm Isaiah.
And I'm Kate.
And on this episode, we're going to talk about social media, well, media in general, and its influence. It's kind of a part two of last week's conversation. So if you hadn't been here last week, definitely recommend going back and listening to that. But I think we're going to get into it. Anything you want to shout out before we jump into this subject?
No, just give last week's episode a listen, but to briefly encapsulate it, we talked about the varying programs that have presented over the years and what's been successful for us, successful and unsuccessful, the things that we've tried over time and how society kind of interacts with them. So now we're going to kind of broaden that out and talk about the larger things at play.
So I think my first experience with any like kind of media around diet fatting, and again, not to use that term, there's definitely a better term, but it escapes me at the moment. That I think my first experience was definitely like the Jenny Craig on TV. Like that was like a Jenny Craig ad. Watching, I don't even know what I was watching at the time. I'm sure it was some kids show. What was your first interaction? What do you remember first?
Oh, I don't know. There's a few things that happened all at once, but I remember Suzanne Summers pumping that Thigh Master.
Oh, yeah.
And, those sorts of things. And there was an ab roller ad that I remember them trying to sell.
Do you remember the ab roller? With the ball in the middle and it.
My parents bought one of those. It worked. Like it was definitely an ab workout, but so do sit-ups.
Yeah, I remember those.
And then in terms of pure weight loss, I remember the Slim Fast and Weight Watchers, of course. I hope I'm not misremembering this, but I feel like Oprah had a partnership with the Weight Watchers early in the 90s.
Yes, I do. I remember Oprah having some Weight Watcher thing. I think it was Weight Watchers. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it was Weight Watchers.
I think it was.
But I do remember Oprah having a whole thing. And I was like Oprah approved and all that stuff.
Which goes to show, so we're talking about media and its influence. Oprah is, I think, a great place to start because through the 90s and the early part of the 2000s, from the 80s right to the early 2000s, she was so famous and she was so famously struggling with her weight. Mm-hmm. And it fluctuated so much that she was like this icon for women who's like, wow, she struggles with the same things I do. And she was very open about it. And, she'd lose weight and she'd partner with Weight Watchers. She'd lose weight. I think she may have even partnered with Jenny Craig at one point.
Maybe.
I'd have to go back and check this. Please, Oprah, don't sue me for being wrong about this if I'm wrong. Because Oprah obviously listens to our show. She's going to have us on.
All of the celebrities.
She's actually going to sign us on her network.
Oh, perfect. That network still exists?
Harpo, doesn't it?
I thought it was OWN. The OWN network.
Oh, yeah. The OWN network. Harpo Studios was anyway, yes. It doesn't matter. Don't sue me, Oprah. I love you. But she was so famously struggling with it. And I remember my mom saying one day, this is at the height when she was launching the magazine and came out that she had her own chef and she had him on the show. He was this good looking chap. Or he was her trainer. And then there was this woman, Rosie something, who ended up with her own magazine. And she was her personal chef and all of these things. So this is a woman who had literally had every advantage, personal chef, somebody to help her train, the money to deal with it all. And she still struggled with it. Right. And it's like, wow, this must be something bigger, so to speak. Than simple diet and exercise, because this is right. I remember Jenny Craig was big, and I remember Oprah being I remember seeing Oprah fluctuating in and out of being skinny, being big, and I never really clued into it when I was a kid at seeing that until probably high school, when you start really thinking about that kind of thing. Right.
But I do remember the ab thing. Do you remember the ab thing where it was like a roller and you laid in it, and it basically just did crunches for you?
I do vaguely remember that now that you say it, but the one that jogs my memory of is the thing that you put on your belly.
Oh my goodness.
And it would just vibrate for you. Yeah. And that was the workout. You just wear this 20 minutes a day. And it just was, it's like, one, where am I putting that? Two, are we really trying that hard to do no work?
Yes, we are. Yeah. And that kind of takes us into the media subject, right? Is like infomercials were back in the 90s and early 2000s were infamous for weight loss things. Just everything you could think of to help you lose weight without working out.
Well, they say that sex sells, but I actually think it's that weight loss sells probably even better than sex, and maybe that's because it may lead to sex. But but it just like it's so. Everybody who struggles with it, which is a lot of people, because whether you're actually struggling with it or it's a mental struggle because you feel like you're struggling with it, is something that is so sought after for the last 100 or so years or more, really since the onset of television and print ads and all of the mass media. Yeah. And this is filtered this way all the way up to the infomercials of 1995 or the TikToks of today.
That's true. Yeah. And I think people, I mean, there's a whole lot of other stuff with social media, but I know people are always like, oh, these kids these days, it's the social media, but really it's been, like you said, it's been like this since, print ads have been a thing, and body image is all like what people are looking for in the like perfect body image has changed throughout that time. And it's always kind of this weird fluctuation of what's been looked at.
Well, in the Depression era, it was people who were a little bit thicker, had a little bit of extra weight on, were considered to be more beautiful because it meant they had money because they were eating. And so it's like, ooh, you're attractive to me because you know how to have money.
Well, and then it was like skinny and like completely flat skinny.
Yeah.
And then you get into like the Marilyn Monroe era where it's like, big curves, big booty, big.
Yeah, but not even really big.
Like, no, that is not big booty as compared to today, but
yeah,
a little bit more. And yeah, it was, just the social media or media in general. I keep saying social media, but media in general is just an influences that quite a bit, right?
Yeah, and it's hard to know what comes first, the chicken or the egg. This is getting to be a very like philosophical or sociological conversation.
True.
But like, what is going on in the world to make the ideal X? So in the in the 50s, when Marilyn Monroe came on the scene, this is that post-war things were pretty good. I mean, unless you're a woman or a person of color.
Or a veteran?
Well, no, the 50s were pretty good for veterans. As long as they survived. Because, like, especially, you look at Canada, they had all these, it was a very affluent time. They had built all these war houses for all the veterans coming back in Canada. So people had homes. It was easy to get in the middle income job. And that meant something. So you'd work, and you'd have money, and like you'd have a wife at home and a couple of kids. And like, it was a pretty like good time for some people. It was a pretty bad time for some people too, but that's a different topic. But for your like,
your white male, white cis male,
your white cis male, or your white cis female if you're into the cooking and the cleaning and and you had a good husband who actually was fun to spend time with, and the ideal,
right?
It was an affluent time because you didn't take a ton of money, and if you had a house, you really had a lot going for you. And that's when like your ideal woman all of a sudden is that slim, trim, keep yourself perfect so you're perfect for your man, and pearls and vacuuming, that June Cleaver ideal. And then you move into the 60s where it's kind of more that mod, but it's still very skinny.
Yeah.
Music, and the music, you think how music is changing over time too. And then you get into the late 60s where there's like just massive change.
Yeah, it was huge. The mid to late 60s into the 70s. Yeah, there was a huge change in
huge sociological change. But then when you see that reflected, that still is a very thin ideal, even though there was were far less bras.
Yes.
But as time goes on, and thin seemed to be the ideal right up through.
Yeah, and I mean, even today, when you look at what most people would consider ideal, it's still thin, curvy. But I think we are in a day and age where it's we're more accepting of different body shapes and sizes and all that stuff. But I think there's still in the media, in media itself, I think there is still a point of contentions where everyone believes that you should be thin and all that stuff, right?
Well, I don't know. Like everything right now, everybody pays lip service to all bodies, and
Yes.
you'd almost get to say, thin as in you'd be slaughtered on social media, but it's represented in the minds of people, but people aren't saying it because, and then there's that, we've talked about this before, that whole, somebody, you got to be yourself and we've got to not be fat phobic and all of this stuff. But if somebody says, well, I'm concerned about somebody's health, which is a bit of a dog whistle, but just the same, is something that somebody says, they're like, no, you're just fat phobic. And it's like, well, does everybody have to be so antagonistic about everything? Can we not just have a discussion, or actually maybe don't?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a point of that too, right? Is people being argumentative in general, just always, then it's really kind of a rough time right now.
Yeah,
I think when we're going back to those to diets and those kind of things, I think that before it was prevalent and it was in TV and it was in movies and written media, and I think that was like pretty poignant and where it's at, and it was in your face then. And I think the only reason why people really push it in social media now is because we have our phones in our hands and people are online 24/7, 365, constantly looking at social media, constantly being bombarded with that kind of rhetoric. And in the age of TikTok with 30-second videos and mass ad integration of people that kind of comes up too, right? Especially with like algorithms and stuff. Algorithms are kind of really smart nowadays to be very poignant on what you're seeing.
Yeah, or on point even. Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about what you're saying as you're saying it, but I almost it caused me to have a completely separate thought about how influenced are we as individuals and as a society by what is being portrayed for a level of attractiveness. Because I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but you ever see like an incredibly like movie star good looking guy with a kind of an average, maybe slightly overweight woman and be like, how did they end up together? Or vice versa, like a really hot, like good looking woman, classically hot woman with a like so dorky guy. And you end up like why? And does it make you want, and I mean, obviously physical attraction is not the be all and end all, right. But like, do you ever think that how we're programmed goes beyond what we're seeing in social media or is it deeper? Or
I mean, I think the media and social media programs us to think that way, though. I don't think it's I don't think it's hard to say which one comes first, but I think realistically, I think we see what the media considers ideal,
mm-hmm.
and that drives us subconsciously to think those things. Right. And then it's a comedy trope, right? It's in comedy movies all the time. It's the goofy fat guy who never got the girl all of a sudden gets the super hot supermodel attractive girl, right?
Right.
Like that's the comedy trope, the romantic comedies, all that stuff, right? So I think that subconsciously drives us. I don't know if intrinsically we are think that way.
Or intrinsically, or what are our level of attraction. So I dated a guy once who was attracted to bigger women. Like that was his type, but he was almost embarrassed by it because he didn't want
your friend, you don't want the social outcast of that style.
Yeah. And it's like, but that's who you're attracted to. So
yeah, I mean, and that's the social society kind of dictates that as well, right? Like, your friends are like, oh, why are you with her? She's so dumb. Or why are you with, him? He's,
yeah,
that definitely that. But again, I think that all goes back to.
Well, I don't actually think people often would question if somebody was really hot but kind of dumb. I don't think very many men would say, "Wow, why are you with her? She's so dumb," because they'd see that he was with her because she's really hot.
I would beg to differ. Okay. It definitely happens. It wouldn't happen in a social setting where it would be a close knit group of
right.
Like your guy friends. It would not be out in the open and everyone would be making fun. It would be like the inner circle,
right?
That would be like, she's super dumb. Like,
would you actually say that to one of your guy friends?
Yeah, no, I've definitely had conversations with guy friends about that.
How do they respond? Does it change what they're doing?
I mean, no. That's just the guy friend thing. It's just you're making fun of each other no matter what. Right?
Okay.
It's just
your girlfriend's so dumb.
Yeah.
I don't have a finisher.
Yeah. I have dated a few dumb people in my day. Not to say they weren't the nicest people in the world, but they were definitely not.
Name them.
Yes. Let me drop all of the names.
Are they listening today?
Probably not.
Are they still obsessed with you?
I doubt it. But I think that our social groups definitely drive that as well, for sure. Like who we hang out with, who we put around us.
Right.
For sure that affects what people think. What you're doing even, right? If you have a group of people around you that smoke, then you probably are more apt to be a smoker.
Yeah, as a person who has never been a smoker and hung out with a bunch of smokers for a while, every time they'd all get up to leave the table to go have a cigarette, it'd be like me and one other person stuck at the table while they're all out partying and having a good time. I'm outside. I started going out with them just so I wasn't stuck alone.
Yeah, no, I
didn't start smoking, but
I found in my time like smoking, I smoked once or twice, a few times, that it was a social thing. It was to be around the other people, and it almost was the mass equalizer, because when you were in the smoking area, everyone was equal and no one, and it was almost like a networking thing at times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even work. Yeah,
absolutely.
And so I think that kind of drives it too, right? Is to be wanting to be accepted into groups of people, and then wanting to keep that group of people. Typically, you will adjust your thoughts, and unfortunately, in today's day and age, it's this a little bit different, where you can say something outlandish, and I'm sure you'll find a group of people that will accept that outlandish statement.
Yep,
that's kind of the alternate side of social media, right? Is the outlandish side, the far extremes are way more prevalent, and you can find a group that believes in those way extremes, versus back in the day where I think people were more reined in because there was less access to the extremes.
Yeah. So back to the kind of, I totally agree. There's just, you can always find somebody to support what you say, even if it's wild. Back to kind of the topic at hand. Do you think that, where do you think it's going? Where do you think the media influence on beauty is going? Where do you think that beauty ideal is going to come from?
I mean, it's going to come from whatever drives it's going to come from whatever drives the economy, right? That's kind of how when you look at, like you talked about before, it's what what the beauty standard has changed, because it kind of is what drives the economy. So it honestly depends on where you think the next economy is going to come from.
So you think like one of the big factors right now is Ozempic. It's making a lot of people thinner than they had been in a long time. And that means a lot of those diet industry places are struggling because they don't have the cash that they once did. CACHE, not CASH, but also the second. And I think that's a kind of a big deal for that industry. Like it could mean the implosion of that industry. And you almost wonder where the diet and exercise world goes next.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at trends and where we're headed, I think the diet industry will still succeed. I think they will move into supplements. I think that's already been a kind of a thing.
That's been a thing.
I think it's going to be more and more prevalent. Is supplement diets and a little bit more pill-esque formed,
more fads and less structured, like not the traditional, because for all its foibles, Weight Watchers and Simply for Life and all those are pretty legitimate.
Yeah, I mean,
they're all based on calories in, calories out, like pretty.
Yeah, they all have the same kind of base structure of them.
Yeah,
where I think with the Ozempic and whatever the other ones are all the same kind of the fake brands are called, not fake brands, but cheaper brands, I guess. No name brands. That's the one. I think those are definitely driving the economy right now, and I think supplements will be the next thing because for some people, jabbing themselves with a needle once every day or 2 days is just not a.
Well, moreover, just in some cases, it makes you feel sick all the time.
That too. I think that'll drive people to
and shit your pants.
that I've heard that's pretty bad. I think that'll drive people to pills, and I think pills are easily marketable. And I think the market, that's kind of what you have to look at is what is marketable.
I mean, we've kind of already been there too. If you look at the Excedrin phase of the 70s and 80s, where they literally were prescribing speed,
right,
which was not the best. But of course, it caused you to lose weight because you're on speed.
Yeah. So I think we're going to get into an era coming up where it is advertised 30-second intervals of advertised on wherever they can get it on. I think we're going to go in shorter ads for sure. But I think it will be this quick fix supplement pill that replaces your breakfast or take this instead of your lunch.
I know. Yeah, that's interesting. Like almost future science fiction-y future, like take this capsule.
whether it's true and works or not, that is a whole other story. But I think that's where we're headed.
AI has produced this pill for your breakfast.
Probably already has.
I think on that note,
that
wraps us up.
Interesting little subject. I enjoyed it. Yeah, me too. But where can people find you on the internet?
They can find me at Fat Kaylin on TikTok, at Kate and Isaiah Living Large on Facebook, at Kated on Instagram, and at the Kaylin Dean on Twitter. And how about yourself?
And I will be at Maritime Brews on all the social medias. And hopefully by this episode comes out, we'll have our third mic. But if you want to keep supporting us and towards getting better equipment, better things, we'll keep the Buy Me a Coffee going. You can definitely drop that in there. And definitely check us out on YouTube and hit that like, share, subscribe button. It does go a long way. But until next week, thanks for listening and bye.
Yeah.